Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're viewing from. This is Laura Thompson with TAN TV, the African American Network, where we have a local feel with a global reach, and you're tuned into the coffee break. We have the distinct pleasure of interviewing a very, very distinguished gentleman and a very active member of the San Antonio community and Bexar County. And he's a proud, I think he's proud, he's a proud Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated gentleman
Yes,
from the
Psi Alpha chapter.
Psi Alpha chapter. So that's a lot of Greek that I'm trying to learn. But thank you for joining us. But before
Thank you for having me.
before we get started with the interview, I would like for you to give a little bit of biographical information about yourself, who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
All right. I'm John Lester. I am currently the president or boss list of Psi Alpha chapter of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I've been in the fraternity for 16 years. I've held various leadership positions in the fraternity. I've led various committees in the fraternity as well. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 20 years Air Force retired, and I currently work for the Defense Health Agency as an IT specialist. So my opportunities to uplift the community has not always been through the fraternity, but also has been through my military service. So providing service back to the community has always been something I've loved to do. So I have a great opportunity in doing that in the San Antonio community right here and now through the efforts of being the president of Psi Alpha chapter.
Wow. So number one, thank you for your service
Thank you.
to our country, and then thank you for your service to the San Antonio community.
Thank you.
So you all have a multiplicity of programs and initiatives that you offer and provide
Yes.
in the San Antonio community, and it gives me great pride. I'm a native San Antonian, and to see a group of African American men really giving back to the community, it warms my heart. And so I wanted to talk about, I was reading over some of the information about your organization and
Yes,
your
ma'am.
community initiatives, and I wanted to kind of touch on the fatherhood and mentoring aspect
All right.
of it. And I think that's so very important to kind of mentor our young men and bring them up.
Yes. In regards to our fatherhood and mentoring, mentoring has been a long-standing thing that we used to do under our social actions committee for years. But in our conclave about 4 years ago, they made it a mandated program, which is now is mandated by all the fraternities, all the chapters in the fraternity to now have a fatherhood and mentoring committee. So with that comes along various aspects of the actual committee. What we do is we engage from a fatherhood initiative aspect, where we engage fathers and try to give them tools and resources to make them better fathers. We meet with them quarterly, and we also try to acknowledge their accomplishments throughout life. And so through that fatherhood initiative, we've been able to partner with other organizations in the city to help boost the morale and help to provide, again, resources for fathers who need help raising children here in today's society. Another aspect of that is our mentoring. We've done mentoring through various schools here in the San Antonio community, but most recently we started mentoring at George Gervin Academy, and now we're at our Garner Elementary School. And so we have opportunities to engage young men, talk to them about different things, different aspects of life, things that they have a difficult time with, and try to provide them from our knowledge and our abilities to interact with them, provide them knowledge and some guidance towards some areas that they can do things a little bit better. We always try to encourage them to think about, the impact in their decisions. And so with that, sometimes they don't always understand where we're coming from as adults. So you have to bring it down to their level and allow them to understand that we've been there. We've been there. We've made some mistakes in our life, but through our examples, we try to provide them the guidance and knowledge to be successful in life.
Wow, so that's absolutely phenomenal, and it's good to know. It's good information to know.
Yes, ma'am.
So outside of those two schools, are there other initiatives that you have?
So we also have what has been mandated by our fraternity, which is our science, technology, engineering, and math. It's our STEM. And through our STEM, what the fraternity has realized is science, technology, engineering, and math has not really been a focus of our African American youth. And so what they did is they wanted to make that a mandated program for the Omegas to start going out and trying to engage our youth in regards to these areas. So we have a plan in place, a long-term plan in place to engage various schools, various youth in regards to engineering and math, as well as science and technology. And so our plan is a robust plan. It's a plan that we've developed with our committee chairman, Brother Telfair. It has a pretty much a business plan for us to engage the youth. And we also have what we have coming up, engaging with our STEM, is our Youth Leadership Conference. With that Youth Leadership Conference, we bring in not only fatherhood initiative piece, we bring in the mentoring piece, and we also bring in the STEM piece to address fathers, and we address the youth from the STEM component, and we give them tools and resources through educational environments to uplift them during a one-day session.
Wow. So you tuned into the coffee break on TAN TV, the African American Network, where we have a local feel with a global reach, and I have the distinct privilege of speaking with a distinguished gentleman, the Baselius, John Lester, from Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Psi Alpha Chapter,
Yes, ma'am.
San Antonio.
Yes, ma'am.
And so can you tell us, you said you've been involved with the fraternity for about 16 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what was one of the most rewarding experiences that you've had?
Oh, I honestly have to tell you that being elected bossless is one of the most rewarding experiences. I've had numerous mentors in this fraternity that have provided nurturing, mentoring, guidance, and education as far as the various aspects of this fraternity. And so to be a president of something that you really love is one of the most rewarding experiences. I get to kind of lead at one point about 260 members of this fraternity. So it gives me a great opportunity to engage in various aspects of their life, give them guidance, direction, and opportunities to continue to bring glory to Omega. And so it is truly one of my most rewarding aspects of being in this fraternity.
Wow, that's amazing and phenomenal.
Yes, ma'am.
So one final question. So all the programs and the services that you provide for youth, or are they just for young men, or?
No, therefore, we're very diverse. As far as our Youth Leadership Conference goes, we have students from the 11 to 18. So if you are a student and you want to attend our Youth Leadership Conference, you can definitely attend. It doesn't matter, male or female. We are encouraging all of our youth to engage in our opportunities. They're all free.
Wow.
And so with our Youth Leadership Conference, we have those advertised. They are all free. But if I could, I also want to foot stomp another aspect of our fraternity, which is our scholarships.
Okay, that's very important.
Yes, ma'am. And so this year, last year alone, we gave over $70,000
Wow.
in scholarships to San Antonio youth. And that is only possible through our partnership with our 501c3, which is our Psi Alpha Scholarship Foundation. Our Psi Alpha Scholarship Foundation is, again, our 501c3, and they have fundraising efforts that allow us to provide funds for scholarships. Some of the events that fall under our 501c3 or our Psi Alpha Scholarship Foundation are our White Martini Party, the Fiesta Masquerade Party. We have an Earl Campbell Golf Tournament, and all of those proceeds that come from those events help support those scholarships. And again, if you want to look at the numbers for the last 2 years, it's been about $132,000 in scholarship dollars that we provided to youth in San Antonio.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
absolutely
Yes, ma'am.
amazing.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the Earl Campbell Golf Tournament, is that The Earl Campbell?
That's the Earl Campbell.
Is he a Q?
He was a Q.
What?
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, Earl Campbell went off to what we call Omega chapter last year, and but he left a indelible mark on our fraternity.
Wow.
And so, being a leader in the San Antonio community, we wanted to do something to give back to him and his legacy, and so we named our golf tournament after him. And
Wow.
he's truly worthy of having the golf tournament named after him, and that golf tournament has brought in numerous dollars towards various scholarships.
Wow. Kudos to Psi Alpha chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Yes, ma'am.
We just praise you for all of the great things that you provide and the services that you offer to the youth in our community.
Well, thank you, thank you. We look forward to doing greater things. We're always looking at opportunities to engage not only the youth, but the community as a whole. And through all of our mandated programs that allow us to leave a very strong mark in the San Antonio community.
Wow. So you've been tuned into the Coffee Break on TAN TV, the African American Network, where we have a local feel with a global reach. But stay tuned. We have another Omega gentleman that we're going to be speaking with in a very few minutes.
All right.
So we're back. We are tuned into the Coffee Break on TAN TV, the African American Network, where we have a local feel with a global reach. And you're tuned into the Coffee Break again, and we're here with another distinguished Omega Psi Phi fraternity member. And he is the historian, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself first. Introduce yourself, tell us what you do, who you are, why you do it, all of that good stuff.
My name is Mr. Scott Earl. I've been a member of Omega Psi Phi since 2002. I'm entering my 23rd year in the fraternity. I came to the great city of San Antonio by way of the Air Force making me. I got here in 2002. I retired in 2006.
Wow.
I'm a civil servant with the United States Air Force still.
Okay.
I do what I do because I had great parents. My father instilled in me the love of others, the love of community, and the love of helping people. And I think that's why I joined Omega Psi Phi, for the service, to be there for others. And the love of history came from just wanting to know. When you come to a city, every place I was stationed, I became one with that community. My father always told me, find that barbershop, find that place to learn that city. So he always felt, don't be that mark, because if you look like an outsider, they're going to treat you like an outsider. So become one of that community. And that's why I do what I do, man.
Wow, that's awesome and phenomenal. And so I understand that you're the historian for the Psi Alpha chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity
Yes, ma'am, I am.
here in San Antonio. So can you tell us a little bit about what that's like and what that position entails?
What that position entails is going back into the archives and learning about whence we came, learning about the history. It's also keeping the up-to-date history. But what I did was, this is my second time doing this position. Initially, when I took over the position, I went into the archives to learn everything I could about how the chapter started in 1940, November 1st, 1940. Then I looked into the history of each of its charter members, the 8 men who brought Omega Psi Phi to San Antonio. And what I do to this day is trying to tie the past with the present. A lot of times with history, we would not be making mistakes if we look at what others had already messed up or what others have done. So many times people say, oh, this is new. It's not new.
Right.
It's things we've done before. We just relabel it as new. And that's what my responsibility with the chapter entails, man.
Wow. So what would you like for the viewers to know about the history of the Omega Phi Psi fraternity chapter in San Antonio?
With Psi Alpha chapter,
Alpha chapter.
what I want people to know is, like, to know those 8 men. And a lot of times people don't realize these 8 men were just not instrumental for Omega. They were instrumental for the city and the 8 charter members. We could start with the first, and I'm going to go in when they joined the fraternity. The first one is Dr. W.V. Hurd, who joined in 1917 through Delta chapter in Nashville, Tennessee. He was a dentist. He joined the Army, but of course back then in World War I, they did not want a black man's hand in a white man's mouth. So they just had him teach. He was not allowed to actually practice dentistry. So they kept him in the Army, they trained him. He was one of our charter members who came through the fraternity through 2 of our founders. He was blessed to be made at Fort Des Moines in Iowa during World War I by two of our founders, Frank Coleman and Edgar Amos Love. So those brought him in. Then he went back to Delta chapter in Nashville, Tennessee at Meharry, and he just taught because they would not allow him to practice dentistry.
Wow.
And he was our first. Also, if you look on the east side, the David Scott YMCA, that land was purchased through his fundraising efforts. So now the big thing with the youth is gambling. Everyone's on the apps doing fantasy sports. Could you guess what fantasy sports he was practicing in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s here in San Antonio? Negro League Baseball.
Okay.
He earned money through people doing fantasy league of the Negro Leagues, and that's how he raised enough money to purchase the
Wow.
parcel of land that we use for the YMCA's to this day. If you go to the Davis Scott on the east side and walk in and look to the left, that's his picture hanging up. And that's our first charter member. Also, he had the first integrated funeral here in 1961, featured in Jet magazine. When he passed away, it was the first funeral here in the city with blacks and whites from all over the country, because he was the president of the National Dentists. So when you look at your toothpaste and you see that little decal for the dentist, that was what he was the apprentice of as a black man back then.
Wow.
Our second one, which everyone really knows in the city, is the Bellinger family. They were the first black millionaires here in San Antonio. Valmo was his oldest son. He first went to Harvard University. He did a year. Then he went to Lincoln University, where he became an Omega man. Then he went to University of Pennsylvania for law school. His dad, who needed him, brought him back to San Antonio. And then the Bellinger legacy started. They had the San Antonio Register, which was the largest Negro newspaper in South Texas. From 1931 to 1979, they never missed an issue, unlike some of the other African-American papers around the country. And now those archives are very important for us to find out, just not Omega history, but everything from tuberculosis research and things that blacks went through here in San Antonio. And that was Bellinger's legacy.
Wow.
And yes, ma'am.
And a lot of people relied on the register. They were like, when is the register coming out? The register's not, I ran out of papers. Where can I get another one? So that was a big deal.
And it all started because his dad, as everyone knows, Charles Bellinger, was the Democratic Party boss for San Antonio. And he wanted to back a candidate. They had another newspaper at the time, and they wouldn't print his ad. So Valmo said, you know what? You just made an enemy. He went and took over the building, the other side of the building, started the Register. So it all started just because they wouldn't print his daddy's ad.
Wow.
If they would have just printed his daddy's ad, they would have kept the other newspaper.
Wow, that's crazy. So that was number 2.
That was number 2.
Wow.
That was our second. Number 3rd is Madison Lee Preacher. He was a doctor here in San Antonio. He owned the Preacher Medical Complex on Houston. Not only was he a doctor, he was an entrepreneur. He was the first black businessman to open a complex for complete health care on the east side.
Really?
Before you'd have to go to various mom and pop doctors, you might have to go to their house. So he said, let's put them all in one building to give a medical research center. That he also sat on the president's board for tuberculosis and did the research.
Wow.
It's funny, in the
That's
Register,
amazing.
yes, if you go back and look at one of his articles, he talked about wearing masks. Because right after the Spanish flu, he gave tidbits that we could use today during COVID. And it was so funny, when we found that article, we said it's the same things you're seeing on the news today, of washing your hands 3 times, putting on your mask, and things of that nature. And that was Madison Lee Preacher, man.
Wow. I never heard of him. Wow, that's awesome. So that's number 3.
That's number 3. Number 4 was Ernest Fox. Ernest Fox went to school at Wiley College. And he came back to San Antonio. When they chartered the line, he wasn't living here. He was teaching in Corpus. But many of his friends that he went to school who were on that charter line said, hey, you don't have many black people in Corpus or many Omegas. Why don't you commute back and forth? So he was put on the charter line. Then in the 50s, he came here permanently, and he taught drama at Wheatley High School.
Wow. That is phenomenal.
Yes.
So when was he in Corpus? He was born in Corpus?
He was born in that area,
Oh,
but
okay.
he lived in the southern part of Texas until 1951.
Wow. Wow.
And then him and his spouse moved up here, and they stayed here till they passed.
Wow. That's phenomenal. And so that's number 4.
That's number 4.
Wow.
I'm gonna hurry up. So you have number 5, which is S.D. Kane. S.D. Kane was the youngest principal in the SAISD school district at Booker T. He was in charge of all the principals at one time. He was very charismatic. He was our first Baselius, because now Psi Alpha has 30 Baselius. You met Mr. Lester, he's our 30th, but SD Kane was our first in 1940.
Wow. Wow. I'm getting a history lesson right here, just sitting here. Wow, that's phenomenal. So that was the fifth.
Fifth.
Okay.
See, now you'll make me remember the rest. No, I got it. Number 6 is, I say my favorite is G.P. Inge. G.P. Inge was the principal of Wheatley. G.P. Inge came to San Antonio like John and I did, through the military. He was born in Virginia. His godfather, you might have heard of him, Booker T. Washington.
What?
Yes, his family, the Inges, both went to Hampton. He went to Hampton. During the World War I, he was drafted into the United States Army. He came here to San Antonio, met a young Texas lady when he was at Fort Sam Houston, stayed. He taught for 2 years in SAISD, then he was let go. He was let go because the degree from Hampton was not considered a 4-year school. Many people don't realize when you go to Hampton, 2 years was college. The other 2 years was VOTEC. So you learned a skill on top of that. So what he did, even though he was a principal before he joined the Army, what he did was he worked at Sunset Station. Think about the trains. He was a porter on the trains, and he was mentored by Claude Black Sr. On the trains. He cut hair. Because of his light complexion, he was able to cut hair during the day at Sunset Station and at night on the east side. He went back to school. He went to Houston College. Before it was a Houston-Tillotson, you had Houston. He went to Houston. He graduated. He came back, quickly accelerated through the ranks. A year later, he was a principal, and then he took over Wheatley. And a lot of times people think about no pass, no play for athletes today. He started that. And he was one of the most influential. Anyone you talk to who went to Wheatley still talk about him to this day.
Wow. So he started no pass, no play, right?
Yes.
I thought that was a good thing. If you don't,
Very good.
You know, you need to get your education in order to play.
And he started that, and because of his Hampton roots, he made sure that if you did not go to college, you went to a VOTEC or you went into the military. So he was able to give that well-balanced adult learner perspective to the young men that they did not have. And then at Wheatley, he surrounded himself by the founder of Delta Sigma Theta, Miss Davis. Hemmings Davis. She taught there. His football coach was Henry Carroll, the winningest coach in the history of Texas.
Coach Carroll, yeah.
And he was an Omega man also.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. So do you know Freddie Patterson?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. He's a
And he started the chapter at Prairie View A&M. And his influence to join Omega was Coach Carroll.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Because he was the last graduating class at Wheatley before they closed Wheatley, ma'am.
Wow. So that's
Freddie
why
P.
he's so active with Prairie View when they have their
Oh, yes, ma'am.
homecoming and all that. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So go Omega Man. So that was number 6.
Yeah. Then I could give you number 7. Number 7 was Joseph P. Kirchin. They call him JP. He also went to Wiley College. He was the youngest person, being 26 when we started the chapter. He then was drafted into the U.S. Navy during World War II. He came back to San Antonio, continued his life as a postman, and retired here.
Wow. Why haven't I heard of all these people? Well, I heard of them now, so that's a big deal, though. That's a big deal. So, drum roll. We got number 8.
Number 8 is Dr. Richard D. Kidd. Dr. Richard D. Kidd is another Hampton alumni. He came here to get an administrative position at St. Philip's. He worked at St. Philip's College. He stayed in San Antonio for a few years. Then he went back north. He became one of the first professors at Central State. He brought Omega Psi Phi. Not only did he start it here in San Antonio as a charter member, he chartered the undergraduate chapter at Central State University. He also started the graduate chapter, Mu Chi, in Dayton, Ohio.
Wow.
He then became the interim president of Central State. His legacy died young. He passed away of cancer at the age of 59. But his legacy in education, he won so many scholarships to go all the way through his PhD through Omega Psi Phi by winning scholarships at each level. And those are 8 charter members, ma'am.
Wow. So this is phenomenal extraordinary information that, you know, all of us should know. It's a great, great part of the history, not only in San Antonio, but across the nation, because these gentlemen were not necessarily natives of San Antonio, but they came here and brought value to our communities in San Antonio. So this has been a great, great, great conversation. If you have any final words that you would like to offer, you can offer them at this time.
One last one is to go on the Bellinger legacy. I like to talk about Harry Bellinger. The reason I bring him up, he was the first CPA graduate of the Wharton School of Business. He then got his law degree, came back here and became an NAACP lawyer. But the Sweat case is something I feel so many young people need to know about, because without the Sweat case, when I brought up all those charter members, all of them had to go out of state to go to grad school because they did not have a graduate school for African Americans in Texas.
Really?
So when Mr. Sweat tried to go to University of Texas and they did not allow him, Harry Bellinger took that case. Harry Bellinger was the first San Antonian to be able to do law cases at the Supreme Court. And they used that documentation to do the Brown versus the Board of Education. And when the Sweat case passed, they didn't allow him to go to UT, but they gave us the funding to start Texas Southern. And Texas Southern became the first graduate school to offer a law program. And that was all through the work of Harry Bellinger. And when he passed away, one of his pallbearers was someone you might have heard of, Thurgood Marshall.
Wow.
So I think that's a legacy. Yes, it's Psi Alpha history, it's a mega history, but it's black history. A lot of times the history of our chapter is also the history of all our people. And I think that's something I wanted to share.
Wow. Woo, I've learned a lot. This has been a great conversation. Like I said, we're going to continue to follow the Psi Alpha chapter because they have a lot of great, great things coming up. You have 2 events in February.
Yes, ma'am.
That are focused towards youth. And then a little birdie told me that y'all are having a regional conference in 2026.
In 2026, yes, we are.
Yeah, and so we just want to follow y'all to find out more about what you're doing and to keep people informed about what the Psi Alpha chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated is doing here in San Antonio. Thank you so much for
Thank you, ma'am.
joining us.